Book of Heaven, Volume 16, Part 2. August 9th, 1923. The human will is darkness. The divine will is light. I was fusing myself in the holy divine volition, and my sweet Jesus, clasping me to himself, began to pray together with me. And then he told me, "My daughter, the human will has covered the whole atmosphere with clouds, in such a way that thick darkness hangs over all creatures, and almost all of them walk, limping and groping. And each human action they do, without the connection of the divine will, intensifies this darkness, and man becomes more blind, because the light, the sun for the human will, is the divine will. Without it, there is no light for the creature. Now the one who operates, prays, walks, and so forth, in my will, rises above this darkness, and as she operates, prays, speaks, piercing these thick clouds, she sends flashes of light over all the earth, such as to shake those who live down below at the level of their wills, preparing the hearts to receive the light, the sun of the divine will. This is why I so much care that you live in my will, that you may prepare a heaven of light, that sending continuous flashes of light may dispel this heaven of darkness that the human will has formed over its head, in such a way that, by possessing the light of my will, they may love it, and my will, loved, may reign upon the earth. August 13th, 1923. The Virgin was the beginning, the origin, the seed of the Fiat Voluntas Tua on earth as it is in heaven. Upon this seed of his own will that Jesus found in his Divine Mother, he formed the great plane of the human will in the divine will. Now, by means of another creature, he shall open the field of this plane to the generations. I felt oppressed because of the privation of my sweet Jesus, and I began to pray, praying him to no longer delay his return to my poor soul, for I could endure no more. Then, to my surprise, I saw that he was clinging to my neck, surrounding me with his arms, and with his face touching mine, and with a light that he wanted to infuse in my mind. As though drawn, I kissed him, but it was as if I wanted to reject that light, saying to myself, "I don't care about knowing things. All I want is to save my soul, and Jesus alone is enough to save me. Everything else is nothing." But as Jesus touched my forehead, I could resist no more, and the light entered into me, saying, "My daughter, the one who has been called to an office, must know the secrets, the importance, the duties, the goods, the founder, and everything that pertains to that office. Now you must know that a simple creature broke the relations that existed between the divine will and the creature. This split destroyed the plans that the divinity had in the creation of man. Now, another simple creature, though endowed with many graces and privileges, but still a mere creature, the Virgin, Queen of all, was given the office to bind again, to cement, and to place herself in relations with the will of her Creator, in order to repair the first split of that first creature. A woman the first, a woman the second. She was precisely the one who, by binding her will to ours, gave back to us the honor, the decorum, the subjection, the rights of creation. Was it not one creature alone that received the beginning of evil, and formed the seed of the ruin of all generations? In the same way, this celestial creature alone received the beginning of good. By placing herself in relation with the will of her Creator, she formed the seed of the eternal Fiat that was to be the salvation, the sanctity, the well-being of all. Now, as this celestial creature kept growing, so did the seed of the eternal Fiat grow in her. And as this seed became a tree, the eternal Word felt captured to rest in the shade of his eternal volition, and was conceived, forming his humanity in that virginal womb, in which his supreme will reigned as ruling king. Do you see then how all goods descend from my supreme will, and all evils enter the field when the creature withdraws from the divine will? Had I not found a creature who had my will as life, who placed herself in relation with me, with those bonds of creation wanted by me, I would not have wanted, nor been able to descend from heaven and take on human flesh in order to save man. So my mamma was the beginning, the origin, the seed of the Fiat Voluntas Tua on earth as it is in heaven. Since one creature had destroyed it, it was just that another creature would rebuild it. And my humanity, that never separated from my divinity, upon this seed of my own will that I found in my divine mother, formed the great plane of the human will in the divine will. With my human will united to the divine, there was no human act that I did not place in relation with the supreme volition. With the divine will, I was aware of all the acts of all generations. With the human will, I kept repairing them, and I bound them to the eternal volition. There was not one act that could escape me, and that was not ordered by me in the most pure light of the supreme will. I could say that redemption cost me little. My external life, the pains of my passion, my examples, my word, would have been sufficient. I would have done it quickly. But in order to form the great plane of the human will in the divine, to bind all the relations and links that had been broken by it, I had to place my whole interior, my whole hidden life, all my intimate pains, that are far more numerous and more intense than my external pains, and that are not yet known. It is enough to say that it was not just forgiveness that I impetrated, remission of sins, refuge, escape, defense in the great dangers of the life of man, as I did in my passion, but it was the new rising of the whole interior of man. I had to make the sun of the eternal will rise, that binding his whole interior with enrapturing power, even his most intimate fibers, was to lead him into the womb of my celestial Father, as though reborn in his eternal will. Oh, how much easier it was for me to impetrate his salvation than to reorder his interior in my supreme volition. And had I not done this, redemption would not have been complete, nor a work worthy of a god. I would have neither balanced nor ordered all the accounts of man, nor would I have restored in him that sanctity that he had lost by withdrawing from the divine will and by breaking his relations with it. The plain is already done, but in order to make it known, first it was necessary for man to know that with my life and passion he could obtain forgiveness and salvation, in order to dispose him to know how I had impetrated for him the greatest and most important thing, the new rising of his will and mine, to give back to him his nobility, the relations with my will that had been broken, and with it his state of origin. Now, my daughter, if my eternal wisdom disposed that one celestial creature, the holiest of all, would prepare the seed of my holy will, in which I formed the plane of the new rising of man in my supreme will, now, through another creature, by letting her enter the eternal dwellings of my will, and binding her will to mine, uniting her to all my acts, I make her whole interior rise again in the eternal sun of my will, opening the field of this plane to the generations, so that whoever wants it can enter into it to place himself in relation with the will of his Creator. And if until now creatures have enjoyed the goods of redemption, now they shall move further to enjoy the fruits of the Fiat voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven. That lost happiness, that dignity and nobility, that peace all celestial, that by doing his will man had caused to disappear from the face of the earth. Greater grace I could not give him, because by placing him again in relation with my will, I give back to him all the goods with which I endowed him in creating him. Therefore be attentive, because this is about opening a large field of goods for all your brothers. August 16th, 1923. The reason why Jesus wants his will to be done, and what glory he receives by this. I was thinking to myself, why does blessed Jesus have so much interest, and want and love so much that his will be done? What glory can he receive from a poor and wretched creature surrendering her will in his most high, most holy, and most lovable will? Now, while I was thinking about this, my lovable Jesus, with unspeakable tenderness and sweetness, told me, "My daughter, do you want to know? Because my love, my supreme goodness, is so great, that every time the creature does my will and operates because I want it, I give her of my own. And in order to always give her of my own, I want her to do my will. Therefore the whole reason, the interest for which I want her to do my will, is to find occasions and means to be able to always give. It is my love that does not want to be still. It always wants to run, to fly toward the creature. But to do what? To give. And by doing my will, she comes closer to me and I to her, and I give and she takes. On the other hand, if she does not operate in order to do my will, she places herself at due distance from me, rendering herself as though foreign to me, and therefore she cannot take what I may want to give her. And if I wanted to give her of my own, it would be noxious and indigestible for her, because her palate, unrefined and contaminated by the human will, would not allow her to enjoy nor appreciate the divine gifts. Therefore my whole interest is because I want to always give of my own. As for my glory, then, it is my own glory that I receive through the works of the creature who does my will. It is a glory that descends from heaven and rises again straight to the foot of my throne, multiplied by the divine will exercised by the creature. On the other hand, the glory that those who do not do my will may give me, if there were any at all, is a glory foreign to me, that many times reaches the point of giving me nausea. More so, since when the creature operates in order to do my will, by giving her of my own, together with that work, I place my sanctity, my power, and wisdom, the beauty of my works, an incalculable and infinite value. I could say that those are fruits of my lands, works of my celestial kingdom, the glory of my family and of my legitimate children. So how could they not be pleasing to me? How could I not feel the enrapturing power of my supreme volition in that work of the creature who only operates to do my will? Oh, if all knew the good of it, they would not let themselves be deceived by their own wills. August 20th, 1923. The sanctity of living in the divine will has nothing prodigious on the outside. Example of the Most Holy Virgin. I was thinking to myself, my good Jesus says many admirable things about his will, and how there is nothing greater, higher, holier, than the soul whom he calls to live in his volition. If it were so, who knows how many admirable things I should be doing, how many sensational things, also externally. Yet there is nothing charming or striking. On the contrary, I feel I am the most abject and insignificant one, who does nothing good. While the saints, how much good did they not do? Sensational things, miracles. And yet he says that the living in his will leaves all the saints behind. Now, while these and other thoughts were passing through my mind, my Jesus moved in my interior, and with his usual light, he told me, "My daughter, when a sanctity is individual, for a time and a place, it has more of external prodigies, in order to attract those individuals, places, and times, to receive the grace and the good which that sanctity contains. On the other hand, the sanctity of living in my will is not an individual sanctity, assigned to doing good to certain places, to certain people, and to certain times. Rather, it is a sanctity that must do good to all, in all times and in all places. It is a sanctity that remains eclipsed in the eternal sun of my will, that invading all, is light without speech, fire without wood, without clamor, without smoke. But in spite of this, it does not cease to be the most majestic, the most beautiful, the most fecund. Its light is more pure, its heat more intense. The true image of it is the sun that illuminates our horizon. It illuminates all, but without clamor. It is light, but has no speech. It says nothing to anyone. The good it does, the seeds it fecundates, the life it gives to all plants, and how it purifies the polluted air with its heat, and destroys what can be harmful to all humanity. And yet it is so silent that even though they have it with them, they pay no attention to it. But in spite of this, it does not cease to be majestic and beautiful, and to continue the good it does to all. And if the sun were missing, everyone would mourn for it, because the greatest miracle of fecundity and preservation of all nature would be missing. The sanctity of living in my will is more than sun. A soul who is upright and fully ordered in my will is more than an army in battle. Her intelligence is ordered and bound to the eternal intelligence. Her heartbeats, affections, desires are ordered with eternal bonds. Therefore her thoughts, her will, and the whole of her interior are armies of messengers that come from her and fill heaven and earth. They are speaking voices. They are weapons that defend all, and first of all their God. They bring good to all. They are the true celestial and divine militia that the Supreme Majesty keeps all ordered within itself, ever ready at all its commands. And then there is the example of my mamma, true sanctity of the living in my will, her interior all eclipsed in the eternal sun of the Supreme Volition. Having to be the queen of the sanctity of the saints, mother and bearer of my life to all, and therefore of all goods, she remained as though hidden within all, bringing good without making herself recognized. More than silent sun, she would bring light without speech, fire without clamor, good without exposing herself. There was no good that would not come from her. There was no miracle that would not spring from her. By living in my will, she lived hidden within all, and she was and is the origin of the goods of all. She was so enraptured in God, so fixed and ordered in the divine will, that her whole interior swam in the sea of the eternal volition. She was aware of the whole interior of all creatures, and she would place her own in order to reorder them before God. It was precisely the interior of man, more than the outside, that was in greater need of being redone and reordered. And so, having to do the greater, it seemed that she would leave out the lesser, while she was the origin of both the external and the internal good. Yet on the outside, it seemed that she would not do great and sensational works. More than sun, she would pass unobserved and hidden in the cloud of light of the divine will. So much so that the very saints have given of themselves, doing apparently more sensational things than my very mamma did. Yet what are the greatest saints before my celestial mamma? They are just little stars compared to the great sun, and if they are illuminated, it is because of the sun. But even though she did not do sensational things, she did not cease to be, also visibly, majestic and beautiful, just barely hovering over the earth, all intent on that eternal will that with great love and violence she charmed and enraptured, in order to transport it from heaven to earth, and which the human family had so brutally exiled, even unto the Empyreum. And she, with all of her interior ordered in the divine will, would give no time to time whether she would think, palpitate, breathe, and anything she would do. These were all charming bonds in order to draw the eternal word upon earth. And in fact she won, and performed the greatest miracle that no one else can do. This is your task, my daughter, to charm me, to bind me so much with your interior, all reordered in the supreme volition, as to transport it from heaven to earth, that it may be known and have life on earth as it does in heaven. Have no concern about anything else. The one who must do the greater has no need to do the lesser. On the contrary, the field is given to others, so that they may do the minor part, in order to give work to all. I know what is needed, the time, the place, the people. When I have to make known my greatest works, also with external prodigies. As for you, continue always your flight in my will, filling heaven and earth, charming me so much that I may not be able to resist performing the greatest miracle, that my will reign in the midst of creatures. August 28th, 1923. It is not enough to possess, but one must cultivate and keep what he possesses. I was feeling highly afflicted because of the privation of my sweet Jesus. As much as I called him and prayed him, he would not deign to return to his little exiled one down here. Oh, how hard is my exile! My poor heart was agonizing because of the pain it felt, for he who forms its life was far away from me. But while I was longing for his return, the confessor came, and at that precise moment, after I had waited for so long, Jesus moved in my interior, squeezing my heart tightly and making himself seen. And I said to him, "My Jesus, could you not come before? Now I must obey. If it pleases you, you shall come when I receive you in the most holy sacrament. Then we shall be alone again, and shall be free to be together." And Jesus, with a dignified and indifferent appearance, told me, "My daughter, do you want me to destroy the order of my wisdom, and to take away the authority I gave to my church?" And while saying this, he let me share in his pains. Then afterwards I said to him, "But tell me, my love, why don't you come? And you make me wait so much as to almost make me lose the hope of your return. And because of the pain, my heart struggles between life and death." And Jesus, all goodness, "My daughter, having placed in you the ownership of my will, I want you not only to possess it, but to know how to keep it well, to cultivate it, to expand it, so as to multiply it. Therefore pains, mortifications, vigilance, patience, and also my very privation serve to expand and to keep the boundaries of my will in your soul. It is not enough to possess, but one must know how to possess. What good is it for a man to possess a land if he does not take the care of sowing it, of cultivating it, of keeping it, to then reap the fruits of his toils? If he does not work his field, even though he possesses it, it can be said that he has nothing with which to satisfy his hunger. So it is not possessing that renders man rich and happy, but knowing how to cultivate well what he possesses. So it is with my graces, my gifts, and especially my will, that I have placed in you as queen. It wants from you the food, the crafting of your pains, of your acts. In everything, it wants that your will, fully submitted to it, would give it the honors and the cortege that befit it as queen. And in everything you do and suffer, it shall have ready the food to feed your soul. And so you on one side, my will on the other, shall expand the boundaries of my supreme will within you. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 16, Part 2. Fiat.